Scout Team, give them a look. Right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Scout Team Net podcast. Give them a look. I'm Ron Murray, and with me today, I got one of the best to do it, 247 Sports. When you need to know about recruiting for the UT Longhorns, 247, Nick Harris is there. How are you doing today, Nick?
Doing pretty good. Can't complain. Pleasure to be on, Ron.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. You know, Nick, one thing I do like to talk about when I get people on, I like to hear people's story. I like to talk about, their journey. So if you can just give us a little bit in regards to how your career started.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I just grew up loving sports, and, me and my dad kind of sat down when I was a freshman in high school, and I was like, how can I get involved right now? And I started interning for some local websites around Texas, just covering Texas high school football. And then in 2017, my dad passed, so it kind of made it like my mission to, keep going and keep thriving and, try to see how far I can get. And then this past year, I've started working for 247 Sports. My good friend Mike Roach, he saw something in me, and he gave me a chance. And, I've been loving it here in this past year. September 1st will be 1 year with 247, and then in January, it'll be 1 year with the Texas site. So I've been loving it. I'm still finding my way, still navigating the light, but I'm loving every single part of it. And I'm loving covering the kids here in Texas and around the country.
So you being a local guy, growing up in the area, being at Rockwall Heath, seeing those games and everything, how was that growing up in Rockwall?
It was cool. I actually went to my freshman year of high school in Allen, and that was Kyler Murray's senior year.
Oh, wow.
And then the very next year, I went to Rockwall Heath, and we made it 3 rounds deep, and I thought it was the worst football team we could have had. And so I definitely had to get used to, not making it to state every year and winning. But it was great at Rockwall Heath. You kind of learn how to come up from a young school. They were only about 6 or 7 years in existence when I first arrived in 2015. And I loved the culture down there, and I was able to, kind of make a name for myself in media there as well, as opposed to Allen where, there's just a bunch of people crowding the hallway and, you're a number in some ways.
Right. It is like that in a lot of places. And, I love hearing those stories and you being able to do your thing. So during this COVID crisis, have you been well? Has your family been well and everything?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There was actually about a month ago where I thought I had it, and I quarantined for 2 weeks because the test result came so late, but I ended up not having it. So, yeah, life is good. Can't complain right now, and just hoping it stays that way because I know it's not the same for everyone else out there.
Right, that's true. We are definitely in some trying times right now, and I'm glad that you're safe. So let's get to some high school football talk. I got to get right to it with you because I'm glad that you've taken time with me on the sidelines when I have all my questions and everything. So now I got you now to ask even more questions. Yeah, got you. With the delay of the high school football season, what do you think that's going to do in regards to the NCAA early signing period and the later signing period in February? What do you think that does with a lot of the recruiting?
Yeah, well, I kind of, to answer that question, kind of go back to, just this whole pandemic. In the beginning, we weren't sure what was going to happen to recruiting, because it was such uncharted territory.
Right.
Were kids just, going to wait until they were able to go out on visits again to start worrying about, college, or was it going to get more active? And it definitely ended up being the latter. I mean, if you look at probably like the top 50 kids at DFW right now, I'd probably say 35 to 40 of them are committed right now.
Right.
So it gave kids a whole lot more time to, focus on, the schools that were prioritizing them. It also gave schools a lot more time to contact them because normally in these last 6 months, there would have at least been combined, a month's worth of time where schools weren't going to be able to reach out to them because of a dead period or something like that. But since they weren't able to see them in person since the first week of March, they've just been on the phone and kind of creating, creative ways to, get a hold of kids and making virtual tours and whatnot. So I think the early signing day stays put just for those kids, who went through that thought process during the pandemic. And, they can just go ahead and still get it out of the way in December as if, it was a normal recruiting class. However, with some conferences looking to play in the spring, I could definitely see the normal signing day in February being pushed back to maybe May or June, just so, kids can get out to those schools and see them, for what they are. So yeah, recruiting is definitely going to get really interesting in the first half of 2021, especially with the 2022 class heating up right now. So, it's never an unbusy day on the job, that's for sure.
So looking at with the situation that it has in, the virtual tours and there's a lot of time being crunched, do you think some of the smaller D1 schools, they're probably able to take advantage of it because some of these kids are like, oh, I don't know if there's going to be a season. I don't know if the season's going to get canceled.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you look at SMU's recruiting class right now, they have some guys that if it was a normal spring with normal 7-on-7 and normal evaluation periods, they could have ended up at, schools like Ohio State, Texas, Alabama. So SMU has gotten multiple steals. UNT has gotten a pretty good amount of steals as well. There's a kid named Silas Barr out of Pottsboro. He's an offensive tackle. That was a big steal for them that I think could have ended up at a Power 5 school. So, these smaller schools have definitely taken advantage of, some of these kids who haven't been able to get out in the limelight of some of the Power 5s. So, it's definitely just a weird year, 2021 recruiting class.
Of course, we know the big names pretty much in the Metroplex. We see them on the websites. We see them on all the lists. Who would you say are some of the DFW guys in the Metroplex that might be under the radar right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to have to think on that one. There's a corner out at Garland. His name is Aaron King Jr. I like him a lot. You also have Chase Biddle and Jordan Hudson in that secondary at Garland. They're the two that are getting, all of the offers and the attention right now. But Aaron King is pretty good as well. I also like Zach Evans, running back from my Rockwall Heath Hawks.
Right.
I'm not trying to be a homer here, but I do love my boy Zach.
He's legit. He's legit.
He is. Thank you for the cosign. Just so people out there know.
Yeah.
Also, wide receiver Tyler Bailey out at Prosper. Saw him in a couple of playoff games last year. He single-handedly helped them win that game against the Woodlands at McLean Stadium in the third round. He's fantastic out of the slot. You also have Curly Thomas out of Nolan Catholic.
I've heard that name, right.
Yeah, and then Jimmy Valzine out of Arlington Bowie. He's a wide receiver, super big and long. He's a kid I like a lot. There's still a ton of really under-the-radar guys, but possibly my number one favorite is running back Tylen Hines out of Plano. Okay. I got to see him a lot during this pandemic at some camps run by my good friend Coach O, and seeing him play on the 7-on-7 circuit as well. He's one of the shiftiest players I've ever seen at this level. He's a kid that with a normal spring could have really blown up, and I hope he gets the opportunity to do that for Plano in the fall.
Big shout out to Coach O. He's a legend. Big shout out to Coach O,
Absolutely.
When you're going through the evaluation process and you all get all these different lists together, sometimes I'm skeptical in regards to some of the private school kids because everybody's not necessarily the most elite player in some of these private schools. How are y'all able to evaluate that? I'm for sure there's just not some formula, but how do you go about that?
Yeah, that's a solid question. We get that a lot. Mainly, you just kind of look at their level of competition. How high up are they in those TAPS rankings? How far is their school up in those rankings? How well does their team perform? But also, if they don't play on, a big school or something like that, try to get them in a camp environment or a 7-on-7 environment, or try to pull some track times for some athletic contests.
Right.
So we try to get as much as we can. And the biggest thing is just data. If we have a kid that, is high in our rankings, it's probably because combined, we've all seen them about 55,000 times. So it's just all about, seeing the kid as many times as we can so we can get the full picture. And I think we really try to do that with those private school kids as well. Because, if you look at, two of the biggest recruits in the 2021 class out of DFW, they're Tommy and James Brockermeyer out of Fort Worth All Saints.
The real deal, yes.
Absolutely. And, those are kids definitely that show it on their film. Their level of competition does not play a factor into possibly having them ranked lower or higher than another person. But, those are kids that plays at private schools, and, we try to see them as much as we can, even if it's like a little home workout that they're doing, just come out and see them, see how they're doing, see how they're moving. And so we just try to evaluate it in so many different ways.
So when you look at some of these recruits, and let's say there are those kids where the majority of their tape and all the information is on Friday nights, how much more emphasis and how much more does it help if they're able to get to camps and they're able to get to, some of these 7-on-7 tournaments? Can some players be hurt if they're only playing on Friday nights?
Yeah, I believe so. I think there's a lot of opportunity for camps and for players going to camps and going out to 7-on-7 tournaments, kind of proving themselves in different environments against different kind of competition. Because I guarantee, just very hypothetically, take Tylen Hines, for example, running back at Plano.
Right.
He played in pretty good competition last year in a district with Allen and all those guys, but he didn't necessarily have the best offensive line at Plano. So you put him in an environment like the 7-on-7, and that's really a place where he can thrive because he can show off those shifty skills and show off his athleticism, because every single player that tries to get him in 7-on-7, they miss the first time. So they better have, someone waiting right behind. So that's a kid that I think really thrives off, kind of a 7-on-7 type environment. Mm-hmm. And you also have kids like, I'm just trying to think of one off the top of my head. There's a kid down in Shadow Creek, Jaden Robertson, down in the Houston area. he really thrives off, going to camps and getting those 40 times in. Just because Shadow Creek is such a competitive environment right now with all the level of talent that they have. So he's a kid that can go out to a camp and drop a 4.40, and that'll bring up the attention of colleges, around the country. So it definitely helps some kids in a lot of ways.
Thank you for that. And it seems that the question around the state, will we get to finish? Will we have a complete Texas high school football season? Will we get it, Nick? What do you think?
Ron, I really wish I had an answer for you. And I don't think anyone wants to hear my pessimistic take on it. So I'm just going to give y'all my optimistic take on it.
Right.
Who knows? That's my optimistic take.
Yeah.
Nothing has been predictable this entire way. So my optimistic take is it's impossible to predict what could happen, from now until January. So maybe things turn for the better. Honestly, though, I mean, it's going to be tough. I really hope everyone's out there wearing their masks.
Yes.
This is a football season that I think will be really special, and not only the high school level, but the college and NFL levels as well. I mean, our Cowboys are looking pretty good going into this 2020 season. There's a lot of area colleges that are looking pretty good going into 2020. So, just stay proactive, love your community, wear that mask, and, hopefully we'll be able to finish out this football season.
So we're going to speak with optimism here. So we get a full high school football season. And I know everybody, they're getting their calendars ready. They're getting their schedules ready. What are the games that Nick, that he has circled, that he has planned to be at this season?
I've honestly been working really hard on these first 4 weeks because we get 1A through 4A normally scheduled. So I've been working really hard trying to, find those 1A through 4A games around the state. But if we're looking at, when 5A and 6A start up, a couple of games I have on my list. I mean, number one, I think this is a no-brainer, Duncanville versus IMG at Globe Life Park.
Oh, yes.
Honestly, if we don't have a completed season and, it's just, by the end of it, things just aren't looking great, I think I would be completely fine as long as we get that Duncanville versus IMG game at Globe Life Park. I think that'll be worth the hassle, in my opinion. I think that's going to be a fantastic matchup of just elite talent, and I think Duncanville actually really matches up well against IMG. I know IMG came to DFW, I believe, in 2015 to play DeSoto, and just didn't quite work out for DeSoto. But I think Duncanville really matches up well with them. They're bringing in a couple of transfers that I think will really help that Panther squad try to get back to the state championship. You also have Arlington Martin and Denton Ryan on the very first Thursday night of the season in Denton. There's 3 Texas commits in that game, so I'm sure I will be there. That's going to be a solid one as well. You also have Longview versus Beaumont Westbrook and Lufkin on October 15th. That's a rematch of the Division II 6A state championship back in 2018. So I think that one will be pretty solid. And, obviously district play brings, the big-time matchups as well. You always get the Cedar Hill DeSotos and stuff like that. So, I'm really excited for the season, and I just really hope we get it as normal as possible.
Yeah, when IMG comes back to Texas, I'm for sure everybody in the state of Texas is going to be a Duncanville fan that day, because I remember that year when IMG did come and they played DeSoto, and I think Bishop Gorman came and they put it on Cedar Hill, I believe it was, and it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. So I know a lot of people are going to be Duncanville fans. But you did bring up transfers, and 247, you all came out and y'all were able to confirm the report. Elite 11 quarterback, former John Paul II quarterback, Grayson James, he will be transferring to Duncanville. What do you think that he brings to that Duncanville squad? And I'm just going to be straight out. Can we see a Duncanville versus North Shore Part 3? Can we see that, Nick? Is that possible?
I think it's possible. I think North Shore can 100% definitely get back there. The biggest question mark I have is obviously Duncanville, because there's just so many teams now in 6AD1 that are experienced, and there's so many teams that Duncanville has beaten that, they have a chip on their shoulder, so they already have a target on their back. But as far as Grayson James, he brings something to the table that Duncanville was, desperately searching for in a quarterback, and that's experience and production. They lost to Quinton Jackson, of course, to graduation. They had Chris Parson, the freshman that started in the state championship last year. He transferred to Red Oak.
Right.
And then they're back up to Chris Parson with Cedric Harden, who transferred to Cedar Hill.
I did not know. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Reggie Samples was the Will Smith meme in the middle of the house with no furniture. That's what he was.
That was a good one.
They were able to pull Grayson James out of John Paul II. And again, he just brings experience and production. He led them to the state championship in their level of TAPS play last year at John Paul II. That was the deepest run John Paul II had ever made in their school's history. So he definitely has experience in big games. He's coming off of a year where he had 44 touchdowns and over 4,000 total yards. And, he can get it done on the ground when he needs to, but he's really that quality, solid pocket passer that I think Duncanville needs next year, especially with receivers like Roderick Daniels that can really stretch the field out of the slot. It's going to be an intriguing Duncanville team. It's definitely going to be different from past Duncanville offenses just because it's kind of a different style quarterback with Grayson James. There's a couple of receivers, and there's one that I can't mention that I think will definitely help out the Panthers in 2020.
Okay, so who are some other squads? Because I look at teams like Frisco Lone Star. It seems like they're just right there. And then, of course, Denton Ryan. They were so close to adding another state championship. And even a team like Lancaster. I think this is possibly a year that they could break through and make a deep playoff run. Well, Cedar Hill, throwing them in there. Who are some teams that you think can take a next step this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go ahead and start with 6A. I mean, if we look at Denton Geyer, that's a team with that's just a scary team.
Yes.
They have a new head coach, Rodney Webb, coming over from Rockwall, and already with a solid quarterback with Eli Stowers. I've always said Rodney Webb is one of the best quarterback teachers as far as, high school coaches in the DFW area. And for him to be able to walk in year one with a quarterback like Eli Stowers, who still has a lot to improve on, but is still already proven in some ways, I think Denton Geyer is really scary. They also have a really good defense led by Deuce Harmon. So those two A&M commits are really going to try to get it done for Geyer this year and bring them back to the state championship and try and win it. And then, obviously you also have Duncanville. They have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder this year just because of all the people they've lost. But, Denton Ryan is also definitely the team you want to point at just because of how close they came last year against Shadow Creek.
Right.
Now Shadow Creek is up to 6A, so that 5A Division I is wide open. You also have Highland Park, who fell in the fourth round last year to Frisco Lone Star. They replaced Chandler Morris with Braden Shager, Hawaii commit. That's another kid that I really, really like. He played for Team Grind in the 7-on-7 circuit this past spring. They went out to Las Vegas right before the pandemic, and they won a national tournament with over 100 teams, and Shager was a big part of that. So Highland Park definitely was replacing Chandler Morris with just as good of a quarterback. You also have Lancaster, of course, Faison Wilson. They have a couple of 2022 guys that are really solid on that offense. You also have Boogie Johnson. Right. That's a team that'll be scary for the next couple of years. But the team coming out of 5A D1 this year from the Houston area that everyone needs to be scared of is the Manville Mavericks.
Okay.
They're also a team with loaded talent. But they're also a little young. I think they might be a year behind. I think 2021 might be their year, but it's very, very possible 2020 could be their year just because of how productive and forceful they were last year.
We're going to be optimistic, and we're going to get a fantastic playoffs. The football gods and people wearing their masks got a smile down on us. You being the UT recruiting analyst, you're the UT recruiting guru. It seems like Tom Herman, he's been able to come to the DFW and say, I like you and I want you. And he's able to get kids to sign up to head down to Austin. And this 21 class that he put together, it seems like it's just phenomenal, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we're looking at DFW kids that are committed to Texas, you have the Denton Ryan stud athletes, Jatavian Sanders and Billy Bowman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they just had one of them, that would be a solid pickup. But they have both. And just kind of another way that they're helping. You also have Austin Jordan, a 2022 corner that plays for Denton Ryan. And you also have Bear Alexander, a 2022 defensive lineman for Denton Ryan, Anthony Hill, a 2023 linebacker at Denton Ryan. So if they have two Texas commits in their locker room every day, who's to say those other three guys aren't leaning that way as well? So those are two really big pickups. If you look around DFW still, you also have Ishmael Ibrahim, corner out of Dallas Kimball, super solid. Safety J.D. Coffey out of Kennedale. Another Texas commit right there. And then Mo Blackwell, linebacker out of Arlington Martin. And Juan Davis as well, athlete out of Everman. So Texas has definitely done their work in DFW. They have a new guy on staff, Jay Valai. He comes over from Rutgers, but he's really been helping this DFW recruiting area. And he has had some major pickups at his cornerback position and just kids out of DFW. So 100% this 2021 class is looking good for Texas, but possibly, it's very, very possible that no school in the country will have as good of a 2022 class as Texas, just based off of Quinn Ewers committing last Friday.
Right, big news.
South Lake Carroll. And then they also have Faison Wilson. And there is so much buzz right now about so many other kids kind of leaning towards Texas. Obviously, those are things I can't get into with you, Ron.
Correct. Hey, I respect it. I understand.
But, yeah, these two classes are looking super strong for Texas, and it's mainly because of their DFW pool.
With the commitment of Quinn Ewers for the 2022 class, what type of signal does that send, especially just getting a namesake like that, being pretty much the head of the class for that year?
It's a major, major impact, man. He not only is he the number one recruit in the country, he's also one of the biggest faces in DFW football. And he's already been, helping to recruit other kids to Texas. He's hopped on FaceTime calls with coaches and high-level recruits in the past week. And he's been active on social media as well. So he's also doing his due diligence and, helping pull kids. And, who can turn down the number one overall recruit in the country? I mean, personally, I wouldn't, I'd at least listen. So my job last weekend after he committed was, getting in touch with, 20 to 30 2022 targets, seeing how this commitment impacted, their decision and, how it impacted their interest in Texas. And every single one has an increasing interest in Texas now. So this 2022 class has a potential to be incredibly special. And you can't, just because of Quinn Ewers being committed, you also can't not look at Faison Wilson being committed in 2022 as well.
He's the real deal too, yes.
Extremely hard. I think he was working extremely hard to try and pull some recruits as well. And I think by the time it's all said and done, he could be the number one wide receiver in the state. He didn't have an opportunity to really show that last year at Lancaster just because of how young he was.
Right.
But he's going to be a primetime option at that Z position next year for the Tigers. And as long as they can get the ball to him, I think Lancaster's going to have incredible success. And, Wilson's going to get a huge boost in the rankings afterwards.
Before I let you get out of here, I got to put you on the spot. Whether it be the DFW, Houston, the Panhandle, West Texas, from what you've seen, where have the best recruits come from? Or where have you seen the best talent?
Oh, that's tough. It would either have to be Houston or DFW. And it just honestly depends on what recruiting class you really look at. Because if you look at 2021, definitely DFW. I think there's a lot more talent here. But if you look at 2022, I think there's a lot more in Houston. I think Dallas is a little top-heavy in 2022. But obviously that could even out over the course of the next year with a full season left. But it honestly gets bounced around between DFW and Houston back and forth. It's hard to pick one.
Nick, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate you. Nick Harris, 247 Sports, UT Longhorns. You need to recruit news. You need to follow Nick. Nick, give us all your information.
Appreciate you having me on, Ron. By the way, anytime, let me know. My Twitter is Nick Harris 247. Same thing for Instagram. And if y'all want to add me on Snapchat, it's Nick_Harris15. I don't do anything on there, though, but it'll help my Snapchat score. Y'all know how it is.
I appreciate you so much, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, Ron.
Scout team, give them a look.
Break.